At Team Toyota, they've been selling and servicing new and used Toyotas in your community for over 50 years. And you can reserve your next new Toyota with them today. You'll get a realistic timeline, and even in this crazy market, they won't charge you over MSRP. Or don't wait at all. With over 75 certified Toyotas, including a bunch of RAV4 and Highlanders, you can drive one home today. And you can always trust them to maintain your current vehicle. Their service and collision centers are high-tech, comfortable, and will save you time and money. Team Toyota can help you go anywhere you want, but they'll always be your hometown team. Just visit teamtoyota.net and choose from 3 locations in Langhorne, Glen Mills, or Princeton. Hey everybody, welcome to the Phillies Talk podcast presented by Team Toyota. Corey and Ricky here with you, and it's the beginning of a new week for the Phils. It's also the beginning of a new streak for the Phils, who beat the Cubs on Saturday and Sunday to end that 5-game skid, their latest 5-game skid. It's been all streaking since the end of April here. Ricky, we saw the offense come alive on Saturday in a 12-run game, and then we saw the Phillies come through with some clutch hits late Sunday, and they were able to eke out that 2-1 win over the Cubs. But still on like a night-by-night basis, you don't know what you're going to get from this offense, from this pitching staff, from this defense. The Phillies really have not found like a consistent footing yet.
You have to wonder, are we just going to have to live with this? Is this just going to be how it is this year? Because Saturday, let's face it, they were helped out. Jamison Taijuan has been awful all season long. When he wasn't throwing the ball right down the middle of the plate, he was walking guys. And then you run into a Kyle Schwarber with the bases loaded in the first inning. And that game was on cruise control from then on. So, it was great that the Phillies showed up on Saturday. Great that they hit the ball around the ballpark. I think, to me, shouldn't that should be a confidence booster. That should be something that you could carry into the next game. All of a sudden, they come out on Sunday, they score 2 runs. I just want to see more consistency, and it starts at the top. You look at a guy like Trey Turner. We could say this till we're blue in the face. He's much better than what we're getting right now. I do know this. This is a guy right now who has we'll call it the Nick Castellanos syndrome. He's in a rut, and he can't seem to get out of it. And what happens when you're in a rut in baseball? You push. Sometimes you just got to take a step back and relax. When he could relax at the plate and when he's swinging at pitches within the strike zone, he could be a much better hitter. He's making it easy on opposing pitchers right now, swinging at pitches out of the zone, bad counts. Being in an 0-2, 1-2 count all the time, that's not real beneficial to anybody on your team. He is a guy that should be able to recognize pitches. He's been around long enough. And that's just a trust in yourself. He doesn't trust himself up at the plate right now. And when that happens, you tend to pry, you tend to push. And what you want to do is come up with a big hit every time up. You can't do that. You're not going to get that many mistakes from a pitcher. So the one thing he's got to let the game come to him. And I think it is that simple. His swing didn't change. What has changed is his approach. His approach to every single pitch, that he's going to get a perfect pitch down the middle and he's swinging at things over his head. To me, that makes it a lot easier on that opposing pitcher, and you're just kind of going on cruise control. You have to understand, for him right now, you've heard the term passing the torch. For him, I think that's a great thing to think about. Just get the bat in the next guy's hands, regardless of the outs when you come up. Do your job at the plate, take some pitches, and basically just relax. This is a guy that looks like he's literally ripping sawdust out of the bat right now. You can't play baseball like that. You cannot play tense. You have to play as relaxed as you possibly can. I don't see that in him yet.
Yeah, Trey Turner, the slump continues. His last now, since dating back to April 18th, the day the Phillies played a doubleheader against the White Sox. During that span, which is over a month, Turner's hitting .211 with a .248 on-base percentage, which means that, 3/4 of the time that he's come up, he's made an out. Just thinking about these counts, because, anecdotally, it seems like he's always in an 0-2 count, right? Well, he's actually, so he started 20 more plate appearances this season, 0-1, than he has 1-0. So he's fallen behind 20 more times than he's gotten ahead in the count early in at-bats. He's also faced 2 strikes in nearly 60% of his plate appearances. So the guy is always behind in the count. You just wonder, there's obviously a humongous track record for Trey Turner. However, he hasn't been in a slump this deep in 6 years. You have to go back to May 2017, and even in May 2017, he was performing more than he is right now. Kyle Schwarber was asked about this over the weekend, just the concept of trying to do too much in your first year in a new city after signing a big contract. And Schwarber said that while he can't speak for Turner, he does know that early last season, he put pressure on himself, some of that undue pressure. The Phillies got to hope that Trey Turner snaps out of this, because when they signed him, the fan base collectively, the organization, all of everybody analyzing the team thought the Phillies were getting like a top 10 hitter in all of baseball. And he just hasn't been that. In fact, he's been the weak link more often than not in this offense. And you just wonder like what they'd be able to put together if you were getting even normal production out of Trey Turner, because we're now 3 weeks into Bryce Harper being back. Bryce Harper's produced. And for a large portion of that span, JT Realmuto and Nick Castellanos were producing, but they just weren't getting enough out of that 2 spot.
And in the Trey Turner situation, it's as easy as relaxing. I really do believe that. But I mean, it's also recognition, pitch recognition. He's not recognizing pitches right now. You bring up the 0-1, the 0-2 counts. This is what you have to ask yourself if you're Trey Turner. Am I getting there because I'm missing pitches? Am I missing, the barrel of the bat on the ball? Am I following that first pitch off that I should be hitting? Or are you swinging at the wrong pitches? Are you swinging at pitches out of the zone? Here, you know what that is? That's an avoidance of trying to get into those counts. You don't want to be in those counts. He knows it. You look at hitters, like historically, you look at stats when you're down 0-2, 1-2 in bad counts. I mean, your batting average drastically goes down. The other thing for the fans, I think one thing that you have to understand, you saw a Trey Turner in the WBC hitting home runs. That's not necessarily his game. His game is a gap-to-gap type guy and use your speed for doubles and possibly triples. And I think maybe he may be in that a little bit of a mode where he needs to launch. He needs to hit the ball out of the ballpark. And when you start getting in that frame of mind, it becomes harder and harder to hit. And what you do is you put yourself into a slump, and then that slump gets to a point where you're lost. And once you get lost, it's almost a rebuild of your swing again and rebuild of your mindset. I think obviously that's where him and Long are right now, trying to figure out from the bottom up, because sooner or later you have to get back to the basics. And once he gets back to the basics, once he starts training his eye again, that's when he's going to become more productive. We haven't even seen flashes of him yet. And usually 2 months into a season, you're going to say, oh, we've seen flashes of brilliance from him. We haven't seen that yet.
Yeah, amazingly, Trey Turner still had more home runs and RBIs in the World Baseball Classic than he has as a Philly. He had 5 homers and 11 RBIs in the WBC, and in 203 plate appearances as a Philly, he has 1 fewer homer, 1 fewer RBI. But going from a free agent who's been disappointing to a guy who seemed to rebound over the weekend, I mean, it's still, you don't know what you're going to get on a start-by-start basis from Taijuan Walker, but he pitched very well on Sunday on 3 days rest. He had thrown 40 pitches in the first inning, didn't make it out of the first inning Wednesday in San Francisco. And then the Phillies returned him on short rest Sunday, and he pitched 5 1/3 scoreless innings. Probably could have gone deeper in that game if not for the fact that he was, pitching on those 3 days rest. The Phillies, what they did was they kicked the can. They're going to have to now make a decision on Tuesday as to who's going to start when the 5th spot comes up again. But, from a Walker perspective, this is a guy who had that awful outing in San Francisco and has had several just like disastrous performances early in games, particularly in the first and second innings. But if you remove that start against the Giants, he actually has been a little better. 4 of his last 5 starts pitched pretty well. He's been limiting the walks more than he has his first few starts. And what stood out to me on Sunday is that Walker had his best 2-seam fastball of the season. Like the 2-seamer was really moving. He was starting it, inside to lefties and coming back over the plate. So when he has that to go along with the splitter, it gives a hitter legitimately 2 different things to think about. I think that too often early in the season, they've only had to worry about the splitter.
If you notice, they simplified him. His windup was extremely simplified on Sunday. And what I mean by that, it was just pick up the leg and pitch. There was no extra movement. And it's funny because when you teach kids, a lot of kids will, hey, could I go from the windup? Could I do this? You always get back to one point, and that's your balance point. And that's all he was doing, was hitting his balance point and going through the plate. You're absolutely right about his movement. His movement was tremendous. And you could see the frustration. I believe it was the first inning when JT picked off, I forgot who at first base. He picked off a runner at first base, and all of a sudden that kind of put after a walk, and that kind of put him into a good situation. I really believe it's when he's not throwing strikes, he gets more frustrated, and what happens is he takes movement off of pitches, which straightens things out over the middle of the plate. And 91, 92 sometimes over the middle of the plate, it's very hittable for a major league player. But you start throwing that with movement and moving the ball in and out like he did on Sunday, it's only going to help the ball club. This is a guy that I think he may have, and I'm saying stuff-wise because I'm including movement, he may have some of the best stuff on this team. As long as he can control it, it's when he starts getting in trouble is ball 4, a walk. All of a sudden, he's got 2 guys on, nobody out. You saw it, 40 pitches for 2 outs in San Francisco. Sometimes he's just right down the middle of the plate. It's all or nothing with him, it really seems like. He's either got it on a certain day or has nothing whatsoever. And that's why you're seeing some inconsistency from him. I think they simplified his windup on purpose and simplified his mechanics on purpose because that's something that you can carry over. You can carry that into the next game because it's just a leg lift. You're lifting that leg, you're hitting your balance point, and now you're going to home plate. And that one thing that will keep you online. You can't really fall side to side, which he'll get even more movement if he starts going side to side. But if he stays in that straight line and stays on top of the baseball, he'll get that movement, but it won't be overly exaggerated. And I think that was a good move by Caleb Cotham, getting him back on a straight line and simplifying things.
Wouldn't you think, though, you can see why mechanically that makes sense for a pitcher, but wouldn't you think that helps a hitter with timing when it's such a short delivery, like a short delivery without movement? Like I compare that to someone like you think of a Chris Sale, how uncomfortable, how funky it is when you have like those arms and legs coming at you versus when a guy's just lifting his leg and delivering, and you really don't have to worry about like being mistimed in your load or like the setup from the pitcher. What do you think about that? Because you see more of these simplified deliveries now than ever before.
Yeah, hitters, when they're going right, they're not watching your delivery. What they're watching for is a little circle of where the ball is coming out of their hands. And that's something you try to pick up when you're on deck. You try to pick up where his release point is that day. And once you have that, that is your zone. You're not really looking at the pitcher as a whole. So you're not really watching his windup. What you're watching is for that release point and to see if his hand's on the side of the ball or whatnot. But good hitters aren't really looking at the windup. Good hitters are looking at where the ball's coming out of the hand. And, if it's coming out high, if it's coming out low. And for him, a lot of his movement is side to side for Taijuan Walker. He's got that split that goes down and away from lefties. So you're not, even out of his hand, you're not really picking up like, okay, here comes something straight because you're not going to get it. And so even if they know where that release is, even if they know it's coming quicker and more methodical, it's not going to help them if he's on top of his game. If he's staying on top of his pitches and pushing the ball down in the zone, he's just hard to hit. And to really barrel him up becomes really tough unless you've heard us say, certain pitchers will come in and will say, you got to get this guy to elevate the baseball, because when you start elevating, the movement from side to side goes away and the downward movement obviously isn't there. So you want to bring sinker baller pitchers up, and guys that throw with that kind of low movement, you want to bring them up in the zone. If you're swinging at stuff out of their hands that's already low, there's a good chance that's not even ending up in the strike zone. But as a hitter, you always react off a fastball. So if you're reacting off of a fastball and you're getting something with some movement, it's kind of hard to barrel up.
Ricky, we're about a week away from June. You know what that means? It's going to be
Schwarber.
He was actually asked about that over the weekend, that can you feel June coming close? And he started laughing and he said, no, I'm not thinking about it. But then at the end, he said, can it be June tomorrow? So Kyle Schwarber is ready for it to be June, which is his month. Although, you know what, he's performed very well in the month of August as well. But Schwarber seems to be coming on a little bit. Over the last week, he's reached base in 12 of his last 25 plate appearances, hit 2 homers. He's walked 9 times in his last 6 games. He's never going to hit for a high batting average. Like throughout his Phillies tenure, he's probably always going to be hovering around 200. And I think that fans just have to accept that. You take the good with the bad. He showed you over the weekend the good when he hits a first inning grand slam like that off of Jamison Tyone and the team just cruises to a victory. But early in the season, we have definitely seen a lot of the other version of Schwarber, like the guy who's hitting in the mid 100s, who's striking out a ton. But once he starts walking, that's when I think you start to gain some confidence that things are turning for Kyle Schwarber.
It's all about locking in. And the thing about Schwarber, he almost looked the same leaving spring training last year as he did this year. It's almost like he doesn't get enough at bats or something to that. I don't know exactly what it is, but I mean, when you look at him, the one thing you see is a lot of off balance swings early on. And to me, that's a pitch recognition. He's not really picking up the spin of the baseball, and that throws him off a little bit. The other thing is, his balance, his leg balance, and his base balance has seemed a little bit off until recently. And I don't know how he gets to a certain point. It almost seems like he just needs more and more at bats. And the more at bats he gets, the more comfortable he feels. And it could be, by the way, this whole thing could be a head game to him too, because he hears how well he hits in June. He kind of, maybe it's just one of those things where I'm going to just wait till June. I'll pick everything up. My home runs will start going up. Everything will be all right. But I mean, I'd love to see him get going a little early every once in a while. But, for him, you look at it and you say, okay, well, he had that big home run on Saturday that really helped out the ball club. I mean, that inning could have gone completely different. Could have been a ground ball double play. Phillies might not even score a run. So, I mean, you get the big hit in a good situation. A team had a big losing streak, and you come up big. That's what baseball is all about, is coming up big in situations where your team really needs you. He did that on Saturday. So, I think what you and I are waiting for is that 4 or 5 game stretch that he has 4 home runs in 5 games, and all of a sudden Schwarb's back. I mean, that's what I think we're waiting to see. But I think that plays right into the hand of where this team is offensively right now. Extremely inconsistent. And, you're going to have your ups and your downs. But this lineup, I mean, I'll go with the lineup as a whole is so much better than what we're witnessing right now. I mean, I look at that Saturday game, and I say, well, where is this team every day? They have to be better than this. They have to play better than this, because I think deep down they are better than this. And when it comes down to it, it's all about a mindset and getting yourself back to where everybody needs to be. And we talked about this in one of the last podcasts, that when is the time where 3-4 guys are going to be on fire at once? I mean, it's only a 6-month season. We're sitting here 2 months into the season, and we really haven't seen that yet. You get 3 or 4 guys going for a 2-week period. That's going to add up to about 8 or 9 wins.
Yeah, really, it's been just up and down. Brandon Marsh, hot in April, cold in May. JT Realmuto, cold in April, hot in May. Bryce Harper wasn't around in April, hot in May. So it's just, they've had like 2 or 3 guys clicking at the same time, but not nearly enough of the lineup and the same, go round. But so Kyle Schwarber, we were just talking about, I'm just looking this up actually right now. It's kind of interesting. So Schwarber was picked 4th overall in the 2014 draft. The Phillies actually now have 4 of the top 14 players from that draft in Schwarber, Aaron Nola, Trey Turner, and Jeff Hoffman. Jeff Hoffman's the guy I want to talk to you about, because this is pretty interesting. Comes out of nowhere. Jeff Hoffman, who was a highly touted prospect coming up, obviously to be drafted as high as he was, and he's always had a lot of velocity, but he's never been a big-time strike thrower. However, this season with the Phillies, he's made 4 appearances. He's pitched 6 innings. He struck out 11. 6 scoreless innings with 11 strikeouts and just 2 walks. The 1 run he allowed was unearned. He continues to put himself in good positions to move up the ladder. Like, we talked to Rob Thompson over the weekend about Hoffman, asking him, is it possible this guy could make a spot start for you at some point, just given the fact that there's uncertainty in the 5th spot in the rotation and he's a former starting pitcher? And Thompson said, yeah, it's something that the Phillies coaching staff is talking about, although right now Hoffman's going so good they don't want to mess with too many things. But this wouldn't be the first time we see a pitcher kind of come into his own around age 30, a guy who has a lot of pedigree.
Yeah, he's got good stuff. He's got good life on his fastball, good movement. I think he could use a little bit more work on his slider. It's a little bit inconsistent at times, but besides that, I mean, what more do you really need if you're spotting your fastball? And I think hitters have to be so aware of his fastball, because he's got good life on it, that he could get away with a couple spinners. There's no doubt about that. I think he's one of those guys who I don't know about starting, because I don't know. I just can't see him in a starter's role right now. That switch is not simple. I think going from starter to reliever is a little bit different in a sense, but going from a reliever to a starter, I mean, you're asking to build back up. You're asking to be good for longer periods of time. I just don't know. I mean, I look at him and I like what he does in short stints. So why switch that up right now? I don't know if you want to confuse the guy right now. I think it's a good thing if you want to move him deeper into the bullpen. That's fine at times too, which he's going to get opportunities. Everybody ends up getting opportunities in the back end at one point or another because guys are tired or guys have pitched 3 days in a row. You know, all that kind of stuff happens. But I like what I've seen from him. I like his confidence level. It's high up. So, I mean, everything he's doing right now is good for the Phillies. Starting, I'm not so sure. I mean, I know they're desperate for a starter. Go out and find one. I think that's what you have to do right now. Go out and find yourself a number 4 or number 5.
Yeah, the other thing is that Hoffman's stuff, I mean, it's 98 to 100 in a one-inning role, but if he's starting, it's, who knows if it's going to be 98 or is it going to be closer to 95, and is he as effective in that spot? But yes,
even if it is 98, for how long is it 98? So right. That's right. What I'd be concerned about.
Speaking of velocity, though, it is good to see that Aaron Nola's velocity's kind of bounced back. That was the big theme in the month of April, is where is his velocity? Why is he sitting 89 to 91 miles per hour first couple innings of games? But his velo's come back. He was 93 to 94, really all throughout his most recent start over the weekend, maintained that velocity. He had his entire repertoire working. The curveball was freezing hitters. The two-seamer was freezing hitters. The four-seamer had extra, life and finish to it. The changeup was fading away. He didn't use as many changeups as usual, but I asked him after that start, had you felt as in command of your entire repertoire as you did today? And he said, no, not really. And that was evidenced by the strikeout total, the fact that he struck out 10 after kind of hovering around a handful of Ks in those first 8 starts. So now you look at it, Nola, 5 of his last 7 starts have been quality starts. Over those 7, he's averaged just under 7 innings per game. The Phillies are 5-2 in those starts. So for as much as the bullpen has been taxed by the short stints out of Phillies starting pitchers, just imagine where they'd be without Aaron Nola.
I will say this much for Aaron. I think that was a product of spring training and the way they ran spring training this year. I'm not saying that they're giving away games at the beginning of the season, but when your guys come into spring training, obviously I believe he threw 37 pitches in his last outing in spring training. That's really not optimal. That's really not what you want. I think most guys, you want to be up near 75, 80 pitches leaving spring training. Aaron Nola leaves it at 37, and I think that hurt him in his first few starts. I think he was having a hard time getting that arm speed up is probably one of the biggest issues that players have in, coming out of spring training. Certain guys, like it used to take me 2.5 weeks of spring training just to get that fastball back, and then I'd have a week and a half, 2 weeks to really kind of mix in everything else and make sure everything was going right. But my biggest concern leaving spring training was, do I have my arm speed? Is the arm speed there? Is the fastball jumping, or is it flat? How do I fix that? I just look at it this way. I think Aaron Nola just didn't have enough time in spring training. And when he came out of spring training throwing like he did, I think we all had doubts, is he hurting? Is there something wrong here? And now I think you're starting to see the real Aaron Nola just in the nick of time.
Yeah, we're definitely catching the real version of Aaron Nola, and you can catch all the sports action and more at Rivers Casino Philadelphia. Whether it's the money line or the pass line, there's something for everyone, including a great sports book. Rivers Casino Philadelphia. Philly loves a winner. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. All right, Rick, so there is an NL East road trip that's looming. 10 games against the NL East, 4 in Atlanta, 3 in New York, 3 in D.C. But first up, Monday through Wednesday at home, the Phillies have the Arizona Diamondbacks, who are 27-20. They've been scoring a ton of runs. They have a lot of guys in that lineup that are producing. Corbin Carroll, the dynamic, speedy outfielder, Lourdes Gurriel, who they acquired from the Blue Jays, Taijuan Walker with 11 bombs. This is a pretty good team. You don't think too much about the Diamondbacks, I guess, if you're living on the East Coast, but there are not a lot of elite National League teams this season. There's the Braves, who look like the class of the National League. There's the Dodgers, who have Mookie Betts and Freddie Freeman and Will Smith, but are dealing with significant starting pitching injuries now, with Julio Urias out, Dustin May out, Walker Buehler is going to be out until at least September. So beyond the Braves, this is a wide open National League, and the Diamondbacks early on look like they're one of the better teams in it.
Yeah, well, when you're scoring runs like they do, it makes it a lot easier. I mean, there's no doubt about that. I mean, and they're them coming in here, they're going to think that they're going to score some runs because let's face it, out there in Arizona, that's not the smallest ballpark in the world, and they're doing a pretty good job offensively. So, I mean, there's some right to have a little bit of fear going into a series against the Diamondbacks. They're no longer that team that you could just push away. And for the Phillies, I think you have a guy in Zach Wheeler going in game one. Make a statement. I mean, Zach Wheeler goes out there and pitches a gem. You put some doubt into their minds out there with the Diamondbacks. That's what you need to happen. You need your starting pitching to show up in this series. Because you know what? If they're scoring a lot of runs, what's your job? Shut them down. Shut them down. Stop them right in their tracks. And hopefully they come out and have the Phillies have a little bit of offense themselves. I mean, I really believe it's about time that this team starts breaking out a little bit. And I'm talking in a big way. I'm talking 5-6 runs a game for a long period of time, a nice little stretch of time, because this would be the time to get it going. You don't want to lose 2 out of 3 to the Diamondbacks, and then all of a sudden here come the Mets and here come the Braves, because guess what? The Mets are starting to pitch well. Scherzer and Verlander both threw gems in their last starts. So that's probably got them going a little bit. The Braves are just, they still seem like the juggernaut to me. They still seem like that team that could win every single game that they step on the field. So, I mean, the Phillies are going to have to come prepared the next, 9 or 10 games. You have to come ready to play, and you can't be looking ahead, because this team that's standing in front of you, you make mistakes to them, they're going to make you pay.
Yeah, when thinking about like confidence building games or momentum building series, the Mets just had one against the Tampa Bay Rays earlier this week where they took 2 or 3 from the best team in baseball, and those 2 wins included a bunch of late inning comebacks. So that has to have the Mets feeling like more of themselves and the team they expected to be, just in time for the Phillies to go to New York next week. Zach Wheeler, you're right. He does need to set a tone in this series in game 1, because the Phillies have TBA in game 2, which is probably going to be an opener, and then Dylan Covey, the waiver claim over the weekend from the Dodgers. And then on Wednesday, it's Ranger Suarez, who's really struggled in his first 2 starts, against Zach Gallen, who's one of the best pitchers in baseball, had a 28-inning scoreless streak in the month of April after an even longer scoreless streak last year. So Wheeler has been up and down. Like, he hasn't been as consistent as Aaron Nola. He's been like no runs allowed, 5 runs allowed, 1 run allowed, 4 runs allowed. He has been striking a bunch of guys out, and he has just dominated at home. I mean, since becoming a Philly, he has a 2.33 ERA at Citizens Bank Park. So while some guys struggle at the confines in South Philly, Zach Wheeler has not.
It's all in his head. There's no doubt about it. When you have something good going on, it stays positive for you as a player. And I think him just stepping on the mound at Citizens Bank Park is a positive thing. It's one of those things where he knows when he goes out there, he's probably going to pitch a pretty good game. We haven't seen many stinkers from him at Citizens Bank Park, that's for sure. And maybe when you get on the road, maybe your mindset's not the same. Maybe you're like, oh, you know what? I'm away from home. I don't have my blankie with me. And, sometimes things feel a little different. I think for Wheeler, it's just simple. I mean, he has all the weapons. He has the repertoire. He knows how to pitch. Just hit your spots. It really comes down to that. If you think about any of his post-game press conferences when he had a bad game, the one thing that you will hear from him, I missed my spot. And I will tell you this much, if he's hitting his spots all game long, he's almost impossible to hit, because you can't really sit on anything. Even if you're sitting, I believe he throws like 59.8% fastball, which includes a sinker and a 4-seamer. That's a big percentage. But when you have the type of movement he does on his sinker, you can't sit on anything. So good luck. I mean, the way I look at it, I think he's getting in that mode where he's feeling pretty good about himself. And when that happens, I think he becomes unhittable at times.
All right, well, we'll see if Zach Wheeler can get the Phillies out to an early series lead here against the Arizona Diamondbacks. Thanks a lot for listening to the Phillies Talk podcast. He's Ricky. I'm Corey. We'll catch you later in the week.